Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Hare Krishna. We're studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 8, entitled Questions by King Parikshit. We're on text 29. It's the final verse of this chapter. It's today's February 6, 2021. So text 29 of Canto 8, Canto 2, Chapter 8, Srimad Bhagavatam. Yat yat
Yat yat
Parikshit
Parikshit
Rishabha
Rishabha
Pandunam
Pandunam
Anuprichati
Anuprichati
Anupurvyena
Anupurvena
Tat
Tat
Sarvam
Sarvam
Akyatum
Akyatum
Upachakrame
Upachakrane
Yat Yat Parikshit Rishabha
Yat Yat Parikshit Rishabha
Pandunam Anuprichati
Pandunam Anuprichati
Anupurvyena Tat Sarvam
Anupurvena Tat Sarvam
Akyatum Upachakrame
Akyatum Upachakrane
Yat Yat Parikshit Rishabha
Yad Yad Parikshat Rishabha
Pandunam Anuprichati
Pandunam Anuprichati
Anupurvyena Tat Sarvam
Anupurva Yena Tat Sarvam
Akyatum Upachakrame
Akyatum Upachakrame
Yat Yat Parikshit Rishabha
Yad Yad Parikshit Rishabha
Pandunam Anuprichati
Pandunam Anuprichati
Anupurvyena Tat Sarvam
Anupurvena Tat Sarvam
Akyatum Upachakrame
Akyatum Upachakrane Yad Yad Parikshit Yaspaha
Yad Yat Parikshit Rishabha
Pandunam Anuprichati
Pandunam Anuprichati
Anupurvan Yena Tat Sarvam
Anupurvyena Tat Sarvam
Akyatam Upachakrane
Akyatum Upachakrame
Yad Yad Parikshit Rishabham
Yad Yad Parikshit Rishabha
Pandunam Anuprichati
Pandunam Anuprichati
Anupuvyena Tatsavam
Anupurvyena Tat Sarvam
Akyatum Apachakrame
Akyatum Upachakrame
Yad Yad Parikshit Rishabha
Yad Yad Parikshit Rishabha
Pandunam Anuprichati
Anuprichati
Anupurvyena Tatsarvam
Anupurvyena Tat Sarvam
Akyatam Upachakrame
Akyatum Upachakrame. Would anyone else online like to recite the verse?
Yad Yad Parikshit Rishabha
Yad Yad Parikshit Rishabha.
Pandunamanu Prikshati.
Panduna Manu Prichati.
Anupurvena Tatsarvam.
Anupurvyena Tatsarvam.
Akatum Upachakrame.
Akyatum Upachakrame.
Yad Yad Parikshit Rishabha.
Yad Yad Parikshit Rishabha.
Pandunamanu Prichati.
Pandunam Anuprichati.
Anupurvyena Tatsarvam.
Anupurvyena Tatsarvam.
Akyatam Upachakrame.
Akyatum Upachakrame. Okay, we'll go to the word for word. Yat yat,
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Whatsoever.
Parikshit,
Parikshit.
the king.
The king.
Rishabha,
Rishabha.
the best.
Best.
Pandunam,
Pandunam.
in the dynasty of Pandu.
In the dynasty of Pandu.
Anuprichati,
Anuprichati.
goes on inquiring.
Goes on inquiring.
Anupurvyena,
Anupurvena.
the beginning to the end.
Beginning to the end.
Tat,
Tat.
all those.
All those.
Sarvam,
Sarvam.
fully.
Fully.
Akyatum,
Akyatum.
to describe.
To describe.
Upachakrame,
Upachakrame.
he just prepared himself.
He just prepared himself.
Okay, so this is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 8, Text 29, translation. He also prepared himself to reply to all that King Parikshit had inquired from him. Maharaj Parikshit was the best in the dynasty of the Pandus, and thus he was able to ask the right questions from the right person. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Maharaj Parikshit asked many questions, some of them very curiously, to know things as they are, but it is not necessary for the master to answer them in the order of the disciples' inquiries, one after the other. But Shukadeva Goswami, experienced teacher that he was, answered all the questions in a systematic way as they were received from the chain of disciplic succession, and he answered all of them without exception. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the second canto, 8th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Questions by King Parikshit. Om Ganatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayamupa Kadamayam Derati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tuyubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, and to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, and to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavat utama shloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. Text 29, chapter 8, canto 2 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Yad yad parikshit rishabha pandunam anu prichati anu purvyena tat sarvam akyatum upachakrame. He also prepared himself to reply to all that King Parikshit had inquired from him. Maharaj Parikshit was the best in the dynasty of the Pandus, and thus he was able to ask the right questions from the right person. Hare Krishna. Okay, so today's the final verse of chapter 8. For several months, we've been studying and discussing this chapter. Certainly a major theme in our discussions these months has been to follow in the spirit of Maharaj Parikshit, in that spirit of discovery, and asking the right questions from the right person. And then in reading this, I mean, the special auspicious qualities of Maharaj Parikshit are described here in the verse and purport. Also here, so here also we hear about Shukadeva Goswami, because one thing, to follow in the line of Maharaj Parikshit and Arjuna in the quality and spirit of our questions, and also to follow in the line of Shukadeva Goswami, to be prepared to respond to questions. That's what's coming to me in reading the verse and purport. So Prabhupada writes, but Shukadeva Goswami, experienced teacher that he was, answered all the questions in a systematic way as they were received from the chain of disciplic succession. So yes, we want to prepare ourselves to humbly ask auspicious questions, and we want to prepare ourselves to be able to respond to questions. In Bhakti Yoga and Krishna consciousness, really, we shouldn't be in I don't know. Right? We shouldn't be in I don't know. Okay, so the next verse, which we'll get to tomorrow or maybe sometime next week, we start chapter 9, Answers by Citing the Lord's Version. So just skipping ahead a few months, chapter 10 and the final chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 2 is entitled Bhagavatam is the Answer to All Questions. That's a rather ambitious title. So Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, I like that. Good. Okay, so nice, fine. So we shouldn't, there's no reason to be in I don't know, okay? Because in Bhakti Yoga, so this is a vital point. All questions are responded to intelligently. And so I know early when it was late 83, early 84, I was studying in Esha Torah, Yeshiva. It's in the old city of Jerusalem. It's a school of religious Jewish learning. I was there for several weeks. And some of the leaders and senior members there, they were getting a little worried because the yeshiva bruchas, those who were the yeshiva bruchas, those who were studying Torah, studying to be rabbis, they were becoming influenced by this David Wolf, who was chanting Hare Krishna. And so so some of the top fellows there, they got together, and I remember, so like I feel like I definitely held my own still, and I was like, I wasn't even a bhakti yet. I mean, it was being a chant, but I, I'd read some Prabhupada's books, but there were some questions they were asking I really didn't have a clear response for, and I didn't like that, and I still don't like when that happens. So, and so again, yeah, chapter 10 here, it's entitled Bhagavatam's the Answer to All Questions. And very interesting because Prabhupada described Shukadeva Goswami as an experienced teacher that he was. And it's very interesting if we know the history there. Because Shukadeva Goswami, he's, we're all familiar with this picture here. There he is. And so he's 16 years old. And really just prior to this whole Bhagavatam exchange with Maharaj Parikshit, he was an impersonalist. He was not an impersonalist who had envy in his heart. He was an impersonalist who became attracted to hear Bhagavatam. So he heard it from his father, but he was 16 years old. So from that point of view, he's not too experienced. He's not 86 years old. And he was really just a new bhakta, right? He was just a new bhakta in a sense. Still, he's experienced. He's experienced through his transcendental wisdom. He's experienced with his wisdom, so experienced that all the great sages there who were 86 years old and 1,086 years old and like that, all those sages there, they chose him. You're the most qualified to speak on Bhagavatam, to answer the questions of Maharaj Parikshit. So he's experienced in his realization, not in terms of physical years or even time in the movement. Let's put it that way. Okay. So Prabhupada used the word experience. So yeah. So I know, yeah, I spend a lot of my time verbally and in writing. I spend a lot of my time responding to questions, questions. I mean, so on so many sorts of questions, some, let's say, indirectly related to Krishna consciousness, Bhagavatam, Bhakti Yoga, but also like I spend many hours in a given week responding to direct philosophical questions about Krishna consciousness, Bhakti Yoga. And I feel fortunate about that. Like it keeps me sharp, keeps me on my toes. I probably, just in my inbox now, I probably got about 10 to 15 hours of responses. And I'll get to some today and some tomorrow and some over the week. And so I'm very glad that I get to do that service. I'm very glad that I get to do that service because this response, because first of all, we can hear in Prabhupada's response there that, that he's saying it's not necessary for the master to answer them in the order of the disciples' inquiries one after the other, but he does answer all of the thoughtful, intelligent questions. Well, I say intelligent questions. Like it is sometimes said, the only stupid question is the question that's not asked. Okay, right. So if we have a sincere question, to not be attached. Does this question look good? Like this is my sincere question. So that's good because this is my sincere question. This is where I'm at. And so we can all see that certainly in Prabhupada and how Prabhupada often responded. He often didn't give a direct response. He would respond and apparently to something else, but in ways that are responding often in a much more profound level than the, what might be a superfluous response. So, okay. So that if we notice like, well, I'm not sure how to respond, I'm not sure what the answer is. Okay, so then that opens a door for my growth, my philosophical growth, my spiritual growth. And so let me Let me hear from Prabhupada more. Let me attend more classes. Let me ask questions. Let me continue to grow towards, because again, our theme the past few months towards being like the submissive question asker, like Arjuna and Maharaj Parikshit. And Lord Chaitanya says, Yare Dekatarika Krishna Upadesh Amaragya Guru Hanatara Edesh. Lord Chaitanya wants us to be guru. He wants us to be able to respond to the questions. Okay. And Prabhupada would often say, Prabhupada would say that he does kirtan so effectively because he did Shravanam so effectively. He heard carefully from his spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta, and therefore he's able to respond. So we hear from Prabhupada through rigorously, regularly, again and again, reading his books, hearing his lectures. We hear from Prabhupada through hearing from his sincere representatives. We hear, that's Shravanam, then we're able to do kirtan. We're able to respond to questions. And yeah. So, and yeah, we can be confident in our response to the extent that we hear from the authorized chain of disciplic succession. We hear and then we repeat. Not like a robot, we repeat according to our own realizations, without speculating. And so, so our mood and our disciplic succession is about, it's about sharing. I mean, the term preaching irritates people. So we're sharing, right? Prabhupada spread Krishna consciousness, and we get to repay our debt to Srila Prabhupada by similarly sharing. And there's, of course, a way to do that is kirtan and prasad, and nicely offering flowers to the deity, addressing the deity. There's so many aspects. And our line of disciplic succession is relentlessly, you might say, emotional and devotional, and rigorously philosophical, rigorously literate and philosophical. So that's there too. And so Lord Chaitanya, yeah, wherever you are, Kiba Vipa Kivanyasi Sudrikinaye Krishna Tattvavenet, say Guru Hai. Whoever you are, whatever, you're born in this family, that family, you're from this population, that population. Get to know the science of Krishna by hearing from those who are realized in the science of Krishna, Tattva Veda, and be a guru. Be a guru. Yeah. And of course, my vision of my role of being a guru can have this mysticism around it. Just simply teacher. My role of being a teacher is to support, encourage, inspire people by my example. Not saying I'm doing a good job of it. This is what I aspire to, though, to support people to develop and establish and cultivate their direct connection with Srila Prabhupada, as the main guru who's directly giving them transcendental knowledge that transforms the heart. And I know to do that, a service I do a lot is responding to questions. And that involves endeavoring to meet people where they're at, and sharing transcendental knowledge to support them to grow in life's ultimate purpose, to grow in knowledge. Not we talked about this yesterday, not necessarily information or data, but to grow in realized knowledge of who I am as spirit, soul, as not the body, as servant of God, and so I said, yeah, there's no reason not to know, no reason to be in I don't know. in Krishna consciousness, because everything's answered. Now, that can sound like closed-minded or dogmatic. So, okay, there is certainly a healthy I don't know, right? We use the term like a childlike spirit of wonder and discovery. A childlike spirit of wonder and discovery. And yes, like to know the nature of spirit, the nature of Krishna, Krishna's form, pastimes, the nature of bhakti, it's unlimited. So to be in that spirit of wonder and discovery, that's the healthy, humble I don't know. Yeah, that's devotional attitude. Okay. Then there's, let's call it a ignorant, grungy I don't know, where it can sort of be masked as humility. Oh, I'm not claiming to know. Like that. Whereas no, it's our birthright. It's our responsibility as spirit souls having human experience to cultivate knowledge of spiritual subject matters. Also material subject matters that support the service of spirit, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So like, yeah, I guess the misconception is if you think you know anything, you'll find this a lot in the New Age. If you think you know anything, then that's arrogant and like that. We give the example. Okay, so I know that 3 + 3 = 6. Well, that means you're closed-minded. No, I'm not closed-minded. Because I had an open-minded spirit of discovery in first grade with Mrs. Gerbarg, I was open to hear from Mrs. Gerbarg, and she taught me knowledge, 3 + 3 = 6. And actually, I'm not closed-minded now. Like if you want to present evidence that 3 + 3 is something else, I'm truly open-minded. So just the fact that I have full conviction in knowledge doesn't mean I was or am or will be closed-minded. The nature of spirit, it's made of potency. We're made of knowledge. So like, it's like, okay, well, what is the self? Is the self matter? Is the self something other than matter? Oh, I don't know. No one can ever know. No, that's nonsense. Right? We can, by logic, and by reference to hearing from authorities and by direct scientific experience, it's the nature of the soul to know. It's the nature of the soul to be awakened in realization, right? Always in a humble, childlike spirit of discovery. Spirit of discovery doesn't mean I don't know anything. That's just like an excuse to step up, and show up in our function as spirit souls having the distinctive opportunity of the human experience to cultivate knowledge, intellectual and transcendental, realized knowledge. That's we're made of Satchidananda, eternity, knowledge, and bliss. So it's like, oh, no one can know anything. Nonsense. Okay, and so, all right, now, in the philosophy, we'll often hear this term inconceivable, and we want to be careful and cautious and conscious how we relate to inconceivable. Because again, someone can ask like, well, do we just need to have blind faith that there's a God? Is there even such a thing as spirit? So we could go to, oh, it's all inconceivable, which is kind of just like another form of no one can know. So this is, so this is illusion. This is not, this is a misuse of inconceivable. Inconceivable, achintya beta beta tattva. This is the philosophy of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Means inconceivable and simultaneous oneness and difference. So inconceivable is actually a very rigorous, precise, philosophical truth and response to a particular category of tattva, of truth. It's not like it becomes a sort of catch-all phrase to avoid meaningful intellectual philosophical analysis, right? It means that yes, and as far as we can't know the inconceivable. No, wrong, that's not true. We can know the inconceivable. Inconceivable means through the process of material senses, material mind, material intellectual analysis, there are some categories of truth that are beyond that. Just like, okay, so like if I want to measure temperature and I have a radio, right? So it doesn't matter what I do with the radio. The radio can pick up different frequencies of sound, but it's just not designed to measure temperature. So similarly, through our material senses, they are designed to acquire some sorts of knowledge. And there are some categories of knowledge that are trans-phenomenal, trans-cognitive. Okay. So this inconceivable, it's not meant as an escape from meaningful, conscious, intellectual conversation. And so we're meant to be philosophers. We're meant to be philosophers. Yes, because, and then to be able to demonstrate that nowhere is there higher, more rigorous, more consistent, more rational philosophy than in this philosophy of Bhakti Yoga coming through the Parampara, Shukadev Goswami, Brahma, Parikshit. And then many people, then they go, oh, okay, yeah, there's something here. So let me practice the process. Let me practice the process of bhakti, because the intelligence is convinced. It works both ways, right? Now, well, there's a few points here. One point is that to study the philosophy and understand it with our intellect, that's part of our process of bhakti. That is part of our process of bhakti. It's not separate from bhakti, right? And then also it's true, Krishna says that Vasudevi Bhagavati, this is Bhagavatam, Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janiyat Yashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayana Hetukam. Bhagavatam says that, by practicing bhakti, taking prasad, kirtan, by practicing bhakti, like apart from the processes where part of our practice of bhakti is to study Prabhupada's books and learn the philosophy. But apart from that, just by engaging in any sort of bhakti, then knowledge comes automatically. That's true. That's true. And simultaneously, part of our process is to study the philosophy, ask questions, become expert in responding to the questions. Notice where we're not expert, and let that move me to greater dedication and urgency to hear from Srila Prabhupada, which itself is transformational bhakti. Yeah, and then so like by doing the transcendental process of bhakti, then knowledge automatically comes. And by cultivating knowledge, I was just reading this morning in 4th Canto of Bhagavatam, Prabhupada says that by cultivating knowledge, then one becomes more and more inclined to choose bhakti. More and more inclined to choose bhakti. Maybe you've all heard the airport example, okay? So like the airport represents sattva, it represents knowledge. Sattva means knowledge. Sattva means expanded range of choice compared to lower mode. Like in Rajas and Tamas, there's practically no space to choose bhakti, transcendence. Practically no space to choose bhakti. So like from here, I can't really choose to get on an airplane to London. But if I go to the Orlando or Jacksonville airport, that's like sattva. Okay. At the same time, if I get to the airport and don't get on the plane, well, I'm not really much closer to London than I was here in Alachua, Florida. So it works both. Cultivating sattva increases happiness and increases the preference towards transcendence, towards realizing the inconceivable, and by engaging in transcendental process, by engaging in Krishna consciousness from whatever our mixture of the modes, whatever our level of ignorance, then naturally we awaken to the soul's natural knowledge, natural realization. And so this, becoming more and more expert to be able to respond to the questions. It's important for our service of sharing bhakti yoga. And it's important for me, it's important for us. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Ivambude parambudva samstapyat manamatmana jahisha trumaha baho kamarupam darasadam. He says to Arjuna, okay, so by controlling the lower self with the higher self, by spiritual intelligence, then one can overcome lust, those desires of the lower modes, the lower self. So what is spiritual intelligence? So spiritual intelligence means our intelligence is fixed in Bhagavatam, in Bhagavad Gita. This is the higher intelligence. And so I've seen so many. I've been around about 40 years now, not in this body. In this body, I've been around more than 40 years. So in some connection with Prabhupada's movement. And I've seen many, like maybe they're attracted to the kirtan and prasad, and then life, they're like, Krishna consciousness is fun and enjoyable. It's so fun and enjoyable. But then maybe life takes this turn and that turn, and it's just like, this isn't fun and enjoyable. And then if they're not deep in the philosophy, if their intelligence is not deep in the philosophy, they stop chanting, they stop following regular principles. So kind of the intelligence deeply fixed. Without that, we use this, there was one about a week ago or something, there was a class we entitled it was an evening program that we entitled it Redwood or Seedling. So as we've all experienced, I don't need to tell you, at some points in life, the winds of the material energy can be like severe hurricanes. And if we're not deeply fixed in the intelligence to be able to respond to the questions solidly, according to Parampara, to our own mind, and we practice that by responding to others. Again, I feel very fortunate to get to do that service a lot. So I'm very glad I get to spend a lot of my time that way, responding to philosophical questions from Bhagavatam Parampara. So if we're not deeply fixed, then we're like a seedling. And a seedling, you might get a 30-mile-per-hour wind and it's gone. Or a little critter can, destroy a seedling. But then, okay, then what happens when we got 150-mile-per-hour winds here. We got this ferocious storm. Yeah, thank you, Jim. Yeah, Jim was at that evening program, Harry Bowl. We got this ferocious storm. Okay, but even if it's 100-mile-per-hour winds, big animal bear. Well, if you're if we're a redwood with those extensive networks of roots, then a redwood's not touched. It means we continue steadily in our practice of Krishna consciousness. So yeah, chapter 10, we'll be there in a few months. Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. So so like if someone's asked, who are we? Are we matter? Are we spirit? Yeah, we don't, I don't know. No one can know. No, we can know by logic. Yeah, Prabhupada, as aspiring follower, Prabhupada wants us to cultivate the capacity to respond to any questions according to logic and rationality. That's going to move a lot of people. According to citing references to according to Shukadeva Swami, what Prabhupada says in this purport, citing authentic references. Many people, I don't believe in the Vedas, this and that, but we cite references. It's powerful. I have a lot of experience with it. It's powerful. People get like, oh, this isn't some hippie thing that started with the flower children or something like that. They go, oh, this is solid, ancient, timeless tradition, and sharing our own experience, right? And sharing our own experience, and so we can see, like I would say practically, if not absolutely, like every lecture, every talk, Prabhupada citing references from authority. Even Krishna doesn't need to cite any references, but even in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is citing Vedanta Sutra. Okay, Krishna is citing Vedic references. Right? So this is the epistemology. This is the way to cultivate and share knowledge. So Prabhupada cites references, shares personal experience, and gives logic and rationality for all the points. And so, of course, transcendental spiritual knowledge is infinite, and so just like, so yes, so we say, well, we can look logically that, look, you experience, your body's always changing, my body's always changing, right? Where's the 5-year-old body of David Wolf or Gaetano? Where's the 5-year-old body? Well, that's gone. Okay, where's the teenage body? That's gone. Okay, still there's some constant identity that I call David. Oh yeah, so that's like a logical thing we can experience. So that indicates that the self is something non-material. Oh, okay. Yeah, and that's consistent. Cite reference. That's consistent. Yes, that's consistent with what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body, from childhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at the time of death. So for any of these principles or points, there's no reason to go to, I don't know. And if we find, well, I don't, then okay, let me enthusiastically continue to hear from Prabhupada and his sincere representatives, continue to apply my heart and intelligence to learn the philosophy, to make the distinctions. It is said knowledge is power, and power, knowledge, intelligence means to make distinctions between spirit and matter, between spirit and supreme spirit, and then there's between matter and subtle matter. There's earth, water, fire, air, ether. Then there's subtle matter, mind, intelligence, false ego, and of course, like, okay, so and as we practice bhakti yoga, as we offer obeisances with heart and soul, as we study the philosophy in a submissive spirit, as we attend morning program, then naturally our realization about what it means to be a spirit soul, our realization about the material energy and how it's always trying to trick us, our realization about the transcendental, inconceivable form, pastimes, qualities, and name of Krishna, our realizations increase infinitely according to our surrender. Okay, so like again, by logic, we can understand that the substratum of all existence is not void, or is not matter, or is not even the spiritual oneness. The substratum of all existence is transphenomenal personhood. Okay, well then what is that transcendental person that is the foundation of all existence? What's the qualities? We give this example sometimes. Because so you're saying that God is a blue boy. What? Okay, so So yeah, by logic, we can come to the point to understand that there is personhood behind creation. And we hear from authority that yes, that supreme person is Krishna. Krishna means all attractive. Now, as far as, oh yeah, okay, so then yes, so I believe God is blue. What is that blue? That, not like we can never know. No, that is inconceivable. Atashi Krishna namani napa vedgrayam indra seven mukhi jividal svaimeva sparatyada. That's inconceivable to mundane mind and senses. It doesn't mean it's incomprehensible. It doesn't mean we can't know. It means to know we need to be humble enough to go, okay, let me serve that supreme person with love and devotion through accepting guidance through his pure representative Srila Prabhupada. And then the nature of that transcendental blue, that transphenomenal music that comes from the flute, that becomes revealed to be more and more. Well, yeah. Okay, I'll read the verse again. This is text 29, chapter 8, canto 2 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Yat parikshit rishabha pandunam anu prichati anu purvyena tat sarvam akyatum upachakrame. Translation. He also prepared himself to reply to all that King Parikshit had inquired from him. Maharaj Parikshit was the best in the dynasty of the Pandus, and thus he was able to ask the right questions from the right person. Hare Krishna. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening. And I welcome at this time, if anyone wants to share any realizations, ask any questions, or express any comments or challenges at this time. Questions or comments. Daru Brahma.
Thank you, Baru. I was just wondering, appreciating your quoting of the verses. I just thinking about the Bhagavatam. I was just reminded of a wonderful verse that goes. I mean, I don't have it all completely with me, but Bujopashaka. How's that verse go? You remember? Tatskanda Bujopashaka.
Yeah. I know which verse. Tarko Prakasha, and it's the verse where like to be. Is that the verse that ends Mahajana Yena Gatasa Panta?
No.
No.
This is the one that is just so wonderful. In that one verse, you got two wonderful analogies to help us understand one of the most basic points, which is just as if you want to satisfy a tree, you don't water each and every branch. You just put water on the root. And similarly, if you want to be happy for yourself, you don't just feed every part of the body. You feed the stomach, and then everyone's satisfied. The whole body is satisfied. In the same way, if we just serve God, we'll be satisfied. It's a wonderful, and yet it's so wonderful, simple Sanskrit, and yet it says so clearly that in the short one verse, those two analogies. It's amazing, you know.
Yeah, thank you. Got it. Now, yeah, that's from the fourth canto, Tarur Mula.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it.
yeah, it's the verse about watering the root of the tree, and the verse about feeding the stomach. Yeah, yata Tarur Mula Nishet Chanena. That's the one line I have memorized. That's thanks for So it's so by this process of bhakti, including studying the philosophy of bhakti, then we're watering the root of the tree. We benefit, everyone else benefits, just as we feed the stomach, all the limbs of the body, all the corpuscles benefit. Thanks for that reference, Daru. I appreciate it very much. And it's it moves me to emphasize the point again, because in some circles called Sahajya, things like that, there's like branches of sort of Vaishnavism, pseudo Vaishnavism. They actually criticize persons like Jiva Goswami and the six Goswamis, because like, oh, they're studying philosophy and all this analysis. That's not bhakti. Bhakti is like dancing with Krishna in the bushes, like the gopis or something like that. So hearing Shravanam, hearing, yeah, it means like hearing, kirtan. And Shravanam, a part of Shravanam is to apply our intellect, to hear the philosophy and process it with our intellect. Thank you, Daru Brahma. Ladini Shakti.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
So you spoke a lot about this, like when we say like no one can know, then it's not true. So I really feel like that, like it's my true, like no one can know, like, and this like transrational, or like, okay, we cannot experience it with senses, but we can experience it, I don't know, in the heart. It's really not like convincing for me, because then like, how do I know that it's not, like I can dream about so many things, you know, like, I don't know, cold mountain flying, like not like things that do not exist. I can dream about them and it can feel true, but it doesn't mean that it's just not happening in my head.
Right.
And I also like in my preaching, like this like thing like never worked for me, like worked in a sense that like someone would feel like satisfied with this response that like, oh, like, but there are people like Jesus Christ or Srila Prabhupada, you know, who know God, so we can learn from them, because how do I know that they know? I mean, I don't let this to bother me too much, because I'm just like, okay, like whatever, this is like the only path that has some hope in it. So it's good. Like if there is God, if there is like Krishna, that's good. Like I like that. But I'm really not convinced that we can know in any means, like by like acquiring knowledge from someone who knows, but how do I know that he knows? Or like getting some realizations from within, like how do I know that it's true and it's not just like a concoction? So
Thanks for that. I appreciate you sharing your experience, your doubts. Thank you, Ladini Shakti. Yeah. Well, it gets into, okay, who is this entity that doesn't believe that she or anyone can really know? Who is this entity that's doubtful? What's the nature of this entity? I mean, for me, that's a question that gets to the core of your question and the discussion. So, yeah, is this entity just an epiphenomena of atoms crashing together? Is this entity ultimately nothing and void? And so, yeah, so the Vedic assertion is this entity is this non-physical, call it spirit soul, that's made of knowledge. It's made of realization. And so that's where we go. Like, because it's one that we go to. Sometimes those discussions, we can go to God too fast, you know. Like, God. So let's forget about God, or if there is a God. But yeah, who are you? Okay, who are you? Who am I? Right. So then we can get into, oh yeah, the body's changing, the chemicals have completely changed, and yeah, because matter is made of ignorance. Yeah, it's true. Like the hand can't know anything. Hand can't know anything. It's dead matter, right? The molecules can't know anything. All right. Still, there's some entity that's aware that I was in a 2-year-old body, that I was in just 8 hours ago. I was deeply sleeping in my bed. Okay, so even though I was completely in ignorance while sleeping, but I'm aware that so what is this? What is this entity that's aware? Okay, so the assertion is that entity is something.
assertion.
What's that?
But it's assertion.
Oh, here's the idea. Here's the claim. Okay, so then, so just as matter is made of ignorance, yeah, the eyes cannot know, right? That's like a root cause of illusion. mistaking the actual seer with the instrument of seeing, the actual hearer. The hearer is not the ear is actually that conscious entity that's inside the body, that peers through the eyes, that tastes with the tongue. Okay, so then, all right, so the claim is that the self is something completely non-material with qualities opposite to matter. So just like matter is temporary and dull and ignorant and a source of suffering, so the qualities are joyful and you can believe or not believe. So we say, here's a process to follow to experience yourself as actually an intrinsically cognizant being that's intrinsically filled with knowledge. Now, so then we've maybe it's in the middle of an ecstatic kirtan, or maybe it's while reading about your favorite personality, Urvasi from the Bhagavatam, or whatever it is. Maybe so we have that experience. Prabhupada gives the example that just like if someone's in a restaurant and they've eaten, and then okay, I'm experiencing myself as full. And then someone would say, like, how do you know that you're full? Okay, it's like, I'm experiencing myself as full. I know. I mean, we could measure how much space is left in the stomach, and I'm sure you'll find it 0. I'm full. We don't need any external. So similarly, yeah, the soul, and we've all experienced that. Again, whether it's in kirtan or absorbed in some devotional service, we've all experienced that. Okay, then we might go to the mental platform later in the day or the next moment. But how do I know? Maybe I was just an illusion. Okay. And then as we practice the process more and more, then we become more and more transcendental to the gross bodily and mental platforms, and living on the platform or experience like I'm full, and you can give whatever argument you want, but I'm experiencing myself as full. Malini.
If I have question and I will ask after everybody have responded, but to Ladini also, like the point of like, how do I know that they know? Because like that. And my sense is that Srila Prabhupada responds to that question in his introduction to Bhagavad Gita when he said, critically accept. And so he really approached that doubt that how do I know they know? Okay, well, you don't know that they know, but maybe theoretically just accept, and then everything, all the science that Dhira Govinda probably just developed, and it becomes like, okay, theoretically, and then because with that's what Srila Prabhupada is doing. He knows that we have no ability to know who knows the truth. Yeah.
Thanks for that reference to at least theoretically accept, and then we can inspire in ourselves and others at least enough respect, enough faith in the process. Let me give myself to the process and see if I experience myself as full.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Melanie.
May I share one response?
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. It helps me to look to the previous acharyas before Srila Prabhupada and get to know, like, to me, it makes it more solid, like looking at what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had to say and how much he knew, and then looking at who he trusted and why, and like it makes sense. And then so the disciplic succession helps me feel more conviction in Srila Prabhupada's, the security there and following him. I just thought I'd share that.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, thanks for sharing that very much. Yeah, by hearing from, understanding, disciple succession, Bhaktisiddhanta, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Guru Kishore Das Babaji, Brahma, then that just strengthens your trust. Thank you. Bhakta Len Cohen.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, David. Well, I have so many thoughts, but I guess the one thing that I'm mostly experiencing is, for me, what a daunting task it is and will be to be able to back up my philosophical knowledge, which is very on the low side anyway, but to be able to back it up with Shastra, just really,
It feels daunting. It feels daunting.
very daunting. And then I start to justify, I think about things like, well, okay, Lord Chaitanya, when he was a child, Nimai, he was able to debate anybody philosophically, and yes, defeat them in arguments. But then as an adult, he was just going around and chanting Hare Krishna mantra, and that was what he was like. He didn't sit and give class after his kirtans. Maybe he did, I don't know. But this is where my mind is going, that, okay, yeah, it's important to have the fundamental background. So like, but I guess I'm still like a seedling being brushed aside easily by these winds. And I'm still at the stage of trying to, convince myself, because, I don't have the strength to myself to stay out of Maya and the material energies. So this is where I'm at. I'm not a philosophy student like you are, David, and languages are not my strength. So I'm just a little fearful about, am I ever going to get there? Yeah. I think just coming to Bhagavatam class is a big step for me, because I've resisted that for many years, because yeah, kirtan and prasad, that's fun. And isn't that enough? And then the art of chanting, isn't that enough? If you get deeply into the chanting, isn't that enough? Do I have to know Shastra too, So anyway, these are the directions my mind is going. And I don't even have a coherent question to ask you, but I just want to share my anxiety, I guess, about will I be able to make it in this lifetime? I will make some minimal progress in this lifetime, but to be like you in this lifetime, that's not happening. To give a class like you can, that would be a good stretch for me. Okay, I'll stop.
Len, I appreciate very much your sharing and your reference to Lord Chaitanya. Right. So yeah, Lord Chaitanya's early pastimes, just very rigorous, intense philosophical discussions with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Prakashananda Sarasvati, Ramananda Roy, Sanatana Goswami, Jiva Goswami, Buddhists, and Tattvavadis. Yeah, and then his later years, it's chanting pastimes of Krishna, like that. Right. So, yeah. Okay. So the gopis or the cowherd boys, we don't hear about them, studying Bhagavad Gita. Right. So yeah. So they are super. They are 2,000 foot high redwoods. So if we're 2,000 foot high redwoods, then we don't need to do that either. Any of this study, but. So Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta and Bhaktivinoda Thakur, they're also 2,000 foot high redwoods, and they know it's their service to be very scholarly. So I know, okay, I guess my my sharing is like, yeah, like for me, it was never, it's not about getting there. I never thought in terms of getting there. Just like we think in terms of chant 16 rounds per day. So it's not about getting there, like knowing this many verses or being able to have, like that. But like, make it a sadhana to read Prabhupada's books, whether you feel like it or not, right? Make it a sadhana, just like you're coming to Bhagavatam class most every day. So just maybe the mind's this, that. So I know just early on, I just made it like, okay, Prabhupada has 54, 55 major books. And I just like this morning before I started japa, I decided, because I didn't get up early to read Bhagavatam before. So in my personal reading, I'm on the 4th canto. So I just took 15, 20, 25 minutes, read Bhagavatam. And so just make it like whatever will come with that. That's just like chanting japa. It's success in itself. Just like make it part of your sadhana daily. Or if that's not real, then at least 5 days per week, at least 20 minutes per day, 10 minutes per day. But just make it something that you're reading Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, all the volumes of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Ishopanishad. And that's it. And then it'll be like water wearing away rock. And apart from what it will result in, that's 15, 20 minutes during the day that is beautifully spent. So that my recommendation is I don't focus on becoming this. About 38 years ago, I just focused like this is part of my life. Read all of Prabhupada's books over and over again. And it's not about how many books that I read. It's just like, that's what I do. And then that results in amazing internal experiences. Thank you, Len. Garuda.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Dhira Govinda, for your class. I have a couple of things that, one was, when I was hearing this idea of knowing or not knowing, I was thinking about my own process. Recently coming into contact with this philosophy, Krishna consciousness, specifically feeling like, okay, like there's like this idea that there's an absolute truth, and like feeling like, okay, well, how do I trust that there is an absolute truth? And I feel like what really, like I started to move forward. I felt like a forward movement when I came to a place of like, well, I don't know. And it was more like an attitude shift, like almost like, well, at least let me consider this to be true or not. Like, so I'm like thinking about like what was mentioned in the class today, like, it's like an individual really has to be open to consider, like, at least give themselves to like that paradigm and, just be open to it, whether they believe it or not.
Yeah.
And that was my process. It was like, well, I don't know,
like Malini said, Prabhupada saying, at least theoretically accept.
Yeah.
And give yourself to the process and see what you experience.
Yeah. And I still, have doubts, and I feel like I don't know, and I'm still doubting the absolute truths and stuff. But I still feel like if I can just stay in a place of like being open, then I feel like that's been the most productive to feeling more connected and feeling more like, well, okay. Chanting, oh, this is working for me, chanting. Yeah. Well, if chanting is working for me, maybe there is more truth to this whole thing than, what I know. So
your trust increased because the chanting works for me. Okay. Yeah. Let me try offering flowers on the to Prabhupada. Yeah, that works for me too. Okay. then your faith deepens.
Yeah, yeah. Then going into the regulated principles and the more, committed aspects of this practice, like seeing the results of that, and not doing it, doing it, just kind of playing with the, process and seeing for myself, like, so in getting to that place where I feel like, well, I have undeniable evidence that there's something to this process and that I can't deny.
Yeah.
So it increases my faith more, and trusting these absolute truths. So I also wanted to hear from, because I was a kind of, I don't know why I never really thought about this before this particular class, but so like this idea of like Shukadev Goswami like was chosen to give the knowledge to Maharaj Parikshit. And I'm kind of like thinking about that. I'm like, okay, well, there's all these like sages, all these like, I would assume there's gurus there or whatever, these teachers, and like they probably had so much knowledge and experience. Can you say more about the quality of Sukadev Goswami? What was it? Because he was new, because you mentioned that he was fairly new, he's young, I know he's a spirit soul, but what are the qualities of this individual that he was chosen? Could you say more about that, like his qualities?
Okay, I appreciate your question. Thank you, Guru. Thanks for your sharing. Yeah, and I don't have much realization, and okay, what I'm understanding about that, is that, because others there were senior in so many ways, is that that his not that they were impure. At the same time, he had a special purity of heart, and he appeared on the scene, and he was effulgent in this transcendental purity of innocent absorption in Krishna. Now, I could imagine, and I feel pretty confident saying this, that maybe in another scenario, Shukadev Goswami would be the student and Narada Muni would be on the Vyasasan, or like that. In this particular situation, if we read how Sukadeva appears there in the first canto, he appeared effulgent, absorbed in the pastimes of Krishna, and that's why I got that term from Kalyapani Prabhu. He referred to Sukadeva Goswami as just a new bhakta, like that. So, but my sense is that like he had just freshly heard the Bhagavatam, was so absorbed, pure heart, and he absorbed on the scene, and there wasn't a calculation. Like let's have a vote. Any nominees for who should speak? It was just like clear. And in a different circumstance, maybe it would be Vyasadev who would share. There was a special purity of heart that was self-revealing, and like everyone got it. Like, you're the one. That's my understanding. So it wasn't like a calculation with the checklist. That's my understanding.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if like the fact that the Srimad Bhagavatam, like he's the speaker, I'm just kind of wondering in my mind, like what does that really mean for me or for any of us, like following this or reading and learning from this philosophy? I'm just kind of wondering, like this is like the mood or the quality of this, giving the answers to these questions. So I don't know. I'm kind of in that question. I'm just kind of like, what does this really mean for me? Like the quality of this individual. Anyway, so that's kind of what I'm sitting with. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so much appreciating your childlike spirit of discovery about the special qualities of Shukadev Goswami. And so it's ascribed, he was very beautifully built, beautiful effulgence, beautiful features, and and it was just a complete 100% transcendence to any material concern, and that childlike, enthusiastic spirit of absorption in Krishna. And we don't want to imitate. He's walking around naked there. We don't want to imitate. At the same time, yeah, we do want to aspire for that completely non-envious heart, just wanting to share and emanate pure Krishna consciousness. Something to aspire for. I appreciate your mood of inquiry, Garuda Prabhu. Malini.
Thank you. Garuda's Prabhu's question is kind of also leading to the question I wanted to ask earlier. And it's described, Vyasadeva was there, Sutta Goswami was there, so many sages were there, and they were all qualified to respond to the question of Maharaj Parikshit. And in a sense, Maharaj Parikshit was quite capable of responding to his own question, because from, before his birth, he saw Krishna, and we can imagine all his life, he heard the Bhagavatam, and he heard about Krishna, and of course he was a Kshatriya, so he was involved in the affair of his kingdom, and at the same time it's easy to imagine that he was very strong in his spiritual practice. So even he was qualified. So everybody present was qualified. And when Sukadev Goswami came, it was like very beautiful. Some people like pay obeisances. Some of them stay standing because in fact they were senior to Sukadev Goswami. And it seems to me that the mood was, they were waiting for guidance about who will be the speaker for this gathering. And that's that inner guidance, maybe we can call it maybe parampara, like the Lord in the heart. And also sages, they were sitting here knowing that that's not my turn to speak, basically. And they were sitting, and if they knew it was their turn to speak, they would have gone and received the inquiry from Maharaj Parikshit. However, they didn't have that guidance that, oh, I'm the one supposed to step in. And then when Sukadev Goswami entered the scene, there was bumblebee all around him, and he was effulgent and all naked, and there was a bunch of men, women and children following him. And it was quite a scene. Then everybody everybody there knew he's a speaker.
Yeah.
And it's transcendental, it's pastime, it's not necessarily qualification per se, but it's just, that's how it's supposed to happen. And in our life, we can also see that it's about being guided to know, like, am I the speaker? Am I the one to respond? Who is it? What role am I to play? What other people's roles they are to play? And so that's one thing, and I appreciate the point you made is that, yes, Sukadev Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit could have changed role. Earlier in the Bhagavatam, it's very clear that there is no distinction between the speaker and the listener of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and that at any moment they can switch roles, that the listener can become the speaker and the speaker the listener, and the one asking the question is as qualified as the one responding to the question. Maharaj Parikshit is the grandson of Arjuna, who heard the Bhagavad Gita directly from Krishna, and is in that disciplic succession in a sense. So regarding that, I had a question that you said, what you said is we shouldn't be in I don't know. And, I'm looking at that and I'm looking at the balance there because, to really understand, because it seems almost like, okay, like one is going to be the responder to the question, and that is position. And then it doesn't move from that, and I don't know, it's not possible. And then there is a person inquiring, and as we said, they can move from one to another. But I also see that I experience sometimes asking question and not experiencing the responder to the question in a spirit of discovery, because that may be that sense of like, it's not okay not to know. And then my sense, that can be really a big obstacle towards self-realization and God realization. Because I sometimes, receive response from questions, and the response don't feel like, no, I don't accept. And then usually I'm not in a resisting mood. I'm just in a mood of like staying in a spirit of discovery. And usually by me staying there, then the truth come and maybe I get a revelation from Super Soul, or I get revelation from reading something Srila Prabhupada's books that confirm like, the response I got was maybe not coming from a spirit of discovery.
I appreciate very much your sharing, Malini. Starting with what you shared about Shukadev Goswami. Like Garuda asked, I responded. Okay, then I heard Malini, and I have deeper, fuller realization. I have deeper knowledge now. I really appreciate what you shared. That whole scene with Shukadev Goswami there on the banks of the Ganges. And so, so like Prabhupada, if we read Prabhupada's books, hear his lectures, listen to his conversations, we might find some analogies we've heard maybe 20 times, 30 times. And it's never boring. Because Prabhupada, like Shukadev Goswami, he's filled with knowledge. He's filled with knowledge and always sharing in a spirit of Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam. That's from Lord Chaitanya. Anandam Buddhi, a spirit of unlimited expansion, infinite expansion of transcendental knowledge and transcendental bliss. And then, as you say, but someone else could respond, maybe even use the same analogy, but energetically, it's like this close-ended, here's the answer. And it's not that Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam ever increasing. And so it's quite a different experience. I'm just thinking then maybe there's about 20 of us here now. Okay, so let's say a question like, okay, what do you see as the relationship and distinction between spirit and matter? Just one amongst the thousands of questions. What do you see as relationship and distinction between spirit and matter? And then I know without doubt, I know that I could hear from all the other 19 people in this group, your responses and your philosophical understanding, your realizations. And if I'm in a humble spirit of discovery, I'm going to get enriched. I'm going to deepen my understanding from everyone here. And all of the sharing, I'm assuming, would be within the container of Siddhanta, within the container of Parampara, everyone sharing their realizations personally, individually, and we all get enriched from each other's realizations. And so, I don't know if it's about a balance. It's about whether we're speaker or listener, that we're in that spirit of Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam, of deepening, increasing. As you said, like Maharaj Parikshit and Shukadev Goswami, they could have switched roles. So who's ever in whatever role, we're in that spirit of let's really achieve the goal of human life, deepen our realization of transcendental topics, of Krishna, of devotional service, whatever role we're in. Thank you. Anandini.
Yes, Hare Krishna. I appreciate this discussion a lot, and this point about thinking that I should know. I agree with you, Malini, that it can be like a huge obstacles. And just an example, like from teaching children, the biggest challenge for me, or what I focus on when I have a new student, is to get them to the place where they admit that they don't know. And that they get that it's okay not to know, like it's the best starting point not to know. And once the children, like once they get that, so much learning happens and so much growth happens. And I thought that, like, even Lord Brahma, yesterday we were reading the pastime of Lord Brahma, how he took away all the friends of Krishna. And even Lord Brahma, he was confused. He didn't know that this little boy is Krishna, and he came to the point of admitting. And he even said, he even cites Brahma Samhita, like his own song. He cites it and said, like, oh yeah, in that song, like, I mean, I saw you, I met you, and and now I didn't recognize you again. And I also wanted to say something about giving class, or like sharing this knowledge. Giving class is like a huge stretch for me. But when I do it, I get so much more realization than when I listen to a class. I get a lot of understanding, a lot of, and while speaking, I get more understanding. And yeah, I once I read about a well-known person who teaches courses in personal growth, and he said at the beginning of his career, he sometimes had seminars scheduled and no one turned up, and so he would give the seminar anyway, even if there was no audience. And there was a time when I just felt really eager to learn more, and I would give Bhagavad Gita classes to myself. So
Thanks for that. Thanks for that. And I know that's true for me. Like, I can be in whatever consciousness, dull, ignorant, and really forgetful of who I am. But then if I have that structure, I'm going to give a class, whether it's to one person or 1,000 people, then that moves me. That moves me to study, to deepen my realization. There's a saying, I think, from Einstein, that you haven't really learned something till you can teach it, right? So yeah, and I encourage everyone to create opportunities where you're giving class. Maybe it's to the people you live with, maybe it's in this forum here. So I know that's true for me too. That's why I feel very fortunate to get to do this service, to get to respond to letters. Your example of Brahma, same with Sanatan Goswami, Arjuna, to come to the place of dropping the false ego and admitting that, yeah, I'm lost, I don't know. That's what Arjuna says in Bhagavad Gita, verse 7 of chapter 2, Shishasteham sadimam tvam prapanam. He says, okay, I'm lost, I'm a conditioned soul, I'm confused, I'm weak. Krishna, please instruct me. And then Arjuna, he's dropped his I know what's right. Arjuna dropped that. And then he's open in a spirit of discovery to receive realized diksha, realized transcendental knowledge from Krishna. Same with Sanatan Goswami and Lord Chaitanya. Thanks for sharing about your experience and Lord Brahma.
I was reminded when you share Anandini of Srila Prabhupada also, he gave class like that where there was nobody. But it's not there was nobody. You could see so many personalities around. Narada Muni was there, and there's so many people were there. And then it's never to the four walls because there is all this insect and living entities all around.
Yeah, that's fun. Thank you.
Yeah, Prabhupada, he spoke the introduction to Bhagavad Gita as it is, which is a phenomenal philosophical epic. He spoke the introduction to Bhagavad Gita as it is. He had a tape recorder there in 1965 in New York, and it was him in the four walls, and he gave class, and yeah, so I've given some class. I've given quite a few classes to myself also. Thank you. Daru Brahma.
Oh, maybe it should be. I think that I was just thinking of one with Claudini's statement about it just reminded me when you're what came to me was what you said was amazing. I was thinking of that famous verse, the Tushki Pushki Shudabayonu Gasam. You know that one? And it was stanza by Tushki Pushki. But that, for example, that when you're eating with each bite that you're getting more satisfied and more full. Two things, so it was the perfect answer to that, actually. It also reminded me that one other amazing thing is that you're waiting for the sun to rise, and what we want to see Krishna, but sometimes you've got to wait all day for the sun to rise because there's too many clouds or whatever. But at least if you see the sun sky getting lighter, he says sun's coming, and I'm not so anxious about it. I'm on the right track, so that we also can be honest. We're not seeing Krishna yet, but enough nice things are happening that I'm very encouraged that I'm on the right track, and I'm not going to give it up yet, that sort of thing.
Thank you, Daru. I appreciate that. Yeah, and thanks for that. Both, we eat, we feel full, hunger goes away, we feel nourished, and there's no argument. And then through whatever we experience, maybe it's like, I'm not experiencing the sun of Krishna blazing in the new sky. At the same time, I can also say, neither am I in the darkness of the middle of the night groping. No, okay, it's cloudy. At the same time, I have evidence there is a sun. I have there above the clouds. There is. I have enough knowledge. I have enough experience. And not that I'm experiencing the blazing sun of the noon sky, but I have enough knowledge that it does exist. Thank you.
In fact, always things happen in the day, and I'll say to Kim, well, maybe there really is a Krishna today. This happened, Every time something happens, it seems like things were going bad, but then it goes well. Then you say, maybe there really is a Krishna, So we can do that all the time with things that happen with us. They give us more hope that, wow, that just happened, and maybe I should have more faith there really is a Krishna. Look how these nice things happen. Anyhow, that reminded me of that too. So I want to throw that in. Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Prabhupada ki jai.
Krishna. Jai.
I thank you.